Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the 13th round. This is a review show of Floyd Mayweather versus Andre Berto. If you're looking for the 13th round of the fight, heads up, they haven't had those for about 30 years now. And anyway, you won't find any boxing action here. We're just going to be talking about the entire pay-per-view portion of tonight's card and what Floyd Mayweather insists is the last fight of his storied career. I'm Connor Rebush of Bad Left Hook, and joining me is Scott Christ. Scott, let me just ask you off the bat, do you think Floyd's done?
No, I think he'll be back next year. If it's not next year, though, then yes, he'll be done. It has to be either next May or next September. I don't think he'll take more than a year off. But the thing is, I'm expecting basically a major bidding war for a 50th fight. If HBO comes with an offer, Showtime and CBS will want to counter that. There's going to be a lot of money in a 50th fight, no matter who he fights. So I think most likely, I'd say I'm about 80% sure he'll be back next year. Just because retirements of boxing never really stick, especially one where there's still this much money to be made in just one more fight for the round number of 50. But if he doesn't come back, okay, I'm all right with it.
Do you think you're going to miss Floyd once he's actually been gone for a while?
No, I really don't. And it's not that I dislike him so much or anything like that. It's just and this is a pro Mayweather statement. I feel he has nothing more to prove. There's nothing more that I need to see Floyd Mayweather do. What am I going to see him do at this point? Get beaten by somebody when he's past his prime, when it shouldn't matter? I mean, that's really the only thing left for him to do other than do something stupid like fight at middleweight, which I just don't see happening. I think he's too smart to do that. So, no, I'm really not going to miss him because it's just there's nothing more to see with Floyd Mayweather. I've seen everything he's able to do in the sport.
Yeah, I can't disagree with any of that. I really, in my head, it kind of seems like I might miss having such a defensive specialist at the top of the sport. There's not really any heir apparent in that regard. Floyd, he's been compared far too many times to Sweet Pea tonight alone for me to forgive that comparison. And no, I don't think he's as good as Pernell Whitaker, but Floyd is the Pernell Whitaker of this generation at the very least. And there's not really anybody else who can carry that mantle right now. Nobody's going to step up and be that sort of classic, slick, black American style of boxer that we're so used to seeing in the sport. I think I am going to miss that a little bit. All things considered, do you think tonight was as bad as it might have been? Because I don't. It was okay, I guess, for as far as exhibitions go.
Yeah, I mean, it sucked, but I thought it was going to suck. I mean,
yeah.
The fight. I thought, here's the thing. My problem with this fight the whole way was not so much Andre Berto. Andre Berto does make some entertaining fights, but it's against people who are not Floyd Mayweather.
Yes.
Andre Berto was never on this level. And the problem with Berto is not only does he not bully well, which is one of the only things we've ever seen work against Mayweather, but he doesn't lead action well. Andre Berto's excitement comes in retaliation to somebody else bringing the heat to him. He does not lead. I mean, he's not a counterpuncher either. He's just a guy who his fights get exciting when someone tags him and he starts firing back. I mean, that's really about all there is to it.
Hello, I'm still here.
See, we lost Connor.
The man hosting the show. We're still live, though. Go on, Scott. Sorry.
Yeah, see, I don't even know what I was saying now. It's something about Berto being fun to watch when he gets hit.
Well, and that's exactly it. I mean, Berto's not fun necessarily because Berto's so good. Most fighters who are really fun are not fun because they're good. They're fun because of their weaknesses, right? And Floyd is often so anti-fun because he has so few weaknesses. I do respect Berto's gameness for a guy who I agree isn't very good at leading. He made a pretty admirable effort going into the middle rounds of the fight. It was tough to tell at times whether or not Floyd just basically gave away the rounds. But when Floyd did let up and feel comfortable in his lead, Berto did enough to, arguably win a couple middle rounds. I gave him a couple middle rounds, not because he was taking the momentum away from Floyd at any point, but because Floyd seemed all right with not fighting hard enough to win.
I didn't give Berto anything.
I don't think that's unfair. I really don't. I mean,
there were a couple of rounds I could have seen given to him.
I think really like the only. What's that?
Mostly because Floyd just laid back in those rounds. There were a couple of rounds, but I still thought overall he landed the better and sharper shots in those rounds, so I just couldn't give a round
I
on.
mean, I got to give Berto those rounds if I'm trying to abide by the scoring rules, but like it was a shutout no matter how you slice it. There's not really another way to look at it. Floyd seemed in control from start to end, and that's really the story of most of the fights of his career. And I guess that's not the worst thing you could say about anybody. So, with that being said,
you can say a lot of worse things about him. Definitely.
Yes, you can. You can say a lot of worse things, but we did not get to unveil the laughter-filled speeches we had both prepared in the case that Floyd got knocked out by the most overmatched opponent of his entire career. So.
Yeah. I was gonna lose it. I mean, again, it's not even that I hate Floyd Mayweather so much. It just would have been so amazing that I think my body would have just given out, and I would have just been here drooling and farting my way through this thing. So I have no idea what would have happened if Andre Berto would have won this fight.
Too horribly ironic not to enjoy. It would have been great. So with that being all there really is to say about that fight, why don't we move on to the undercard, which perhaps in an appreciated effort to make up for the lackluster main event was pretty damn stacked as far as boxing undercards go. The night opened up with a bout between who did start the fight? It was Johnny Gonzalez and Jonathan Oquendo. My goodness.
I
forgot. There were 3 solid fights. Johnny Gonzalez, Jonathan Oquendo started the night off. Close fight. I ended up scoring it a draw. One of the judges agreed. Ultimately, Oquendo got a victory that you could certainly say he deserved, though one of the scorecards was completely bizarre. One of the judges gave him every single round except the first one in which he was floored.
Yeah. I had it 95-93 for Gonzalez. I thought the draw was a good score. I thought maybe a point the other way to 95-93 for Oquendo was fine. 98-90 was surprising. I have a hard time seeing Oquendo winning every round other than the first. But at the same time, I mean, what are you going to do? I don't mind the fact that Oquendo won. I don't agree with that scorecard, but it's boxing, and I'm just so tired of trying to reason with these things that I got nothing with that. And I want to say too, real quick, there are actually 4 good undercard fights because the Vanes Martirosyan Ishe Smith fight that aired on Showtime was a really solid fight. That was surprising because those styles didn't seem like they would match up for any sustained action. It wasn't an action-packed fight or anything, but it was very watchable, very entertaining. Vanes did some good things in that fight. Ishe did some good things in that fight. Vanes was just a little bit better tonight, and he got the win, which he deserved. That was a good fight, too. I had that one 95-93 from Martirosyan. So, yeah, overall, this was a very good card. I mean, before you got to the main event.
And the main event was a better exhibition than most of us expected. So, all in all, a pretty enjoyable night of boxing. And I give credit to Ishe Smith.
I must not know what most of people expected then, because
I expected a horribly dull, absolutely actionless fight in which Andre Berto couldn't lead and Floyd Mayweather didn't care enough to make him. So,
yeah, okay. I mean, I can see that Floyd did tag him enough to make a few rounds watchable, I guess.
Yeah, it was like, at least Floyd was like energetic enough to play around. I saw his attitude at the start of the
I liked Floyd fucking around toward the end of the fight. I thought that was fun.
Yeah,
I thought that was entertaining.
We got like 4 good rounds of trash talk and playfulness from Floyd, and
I thought it was great. They should have mic'd him up.
Yeah, I don't know why Kenny Bayless was telling him to shut up. I was like, Kenny, this is the best part of the show.
It's not illegal or anything. I mean, what are we pretending this is a gentleman's endeavor? It's not. It's just let the 2 guys yell at each other and punch. It's fine.
It's not 1890. Folks. This is what boxers do. Yeah. Well,
it's a Mayweather Berto fight, Kenny. Give us something.
Yeah, something. Johnny Gonzalez, Jonathan Oquendo, anything else you think you could take away from that fight? I thought Oquendo looked pretty solid early. He played an aggressive game really nicely, but Gonzalez has always been an interesting fighter to me because if he's pressured enough that he has to counterpunch, he has lots of trouble. But if you give him space to think and put his combinations together, he's a really dangerous boxer puncher. And so it was kind of an interesting interplay between how much could Oquendo push him backwards and how much time could Gonzalez earn with his jab to start putting together his combinations again.
Yeah, Johnny's still a pretty good offensive fighter. I think he's well past his prime, obviously. Fighting at 130, he's really fighting too big. 126 was even pushing it for him. I mean, he was a bantamweight in his prime. So he's still a pretty decent fighter. He lost that fight on the cards. I thought he did enough to win, but it's not a big controversy or anything like that. I think Gonzalez's last stand was really that win over Abner Mares, and that was, sort of a fluky first round, catch a guy cold sort of a thing. So I don't see Gonzalez being a player again at 130 or at 126 if he tries to drop back down. But you never know. I mean, he's got enough power that he can win just about any fight if he catches a guy cold early. And if you do give him time, like you said, he's still a very effective offensive fighter. He's vulnerable. He's always been vulnerable. He doesn't take the best shot in the world, but he's still credible. And I think there are guys who will sort of start racking up some wins over him on the way up. I think he'll probably fade into being sort of a gatekeeper guy.
And he's probably crafty enough to make a few of those fights tougher than expected.
He'll probably some prospects.
Yeah, I always enjoy those kind of performances when the guy who's supposed to be past it just comes back and beats the young undefeated fighter. I think those are always fun, and there's nothing better you can ask for in a guy's career past his prime when it could look a lot worse than him gutting out tough wins. So on to the next fight of the night. We had Berto Jack versus George Groves. Really good fight from the get-go. A little bit slower paced. Kind of reminded me of Andy Lee versus Peter Quillen. Not as much action throughout the fight, but what action there was seemed to have a lot more consequence. I thought that Berto Jack looked fantastic from the get-go. Dealt with Groves really well, countered him nicely, but Groves was just too active from the beginning. As Groves started to tire, probably in part thanks to Berto Jack's fantastic body work, then Jack really started to get his way into the fight. But Groves, I thought he was completely out of it, staged a pretty nice comeback in like the final 2 or 3 rounds. Just wasn't really enough.
Yeah, George Groves was, if nothing else, he showed how tough he is. He showed he is I think he's still a top level sort of super middleweight. He makes a lot of mistakes. But I mean, and again, he's not a perfect fighter, but he's still a very good fighter at 168. Berto Jack's last couple of fights, the win over Anthony Jarrell, this win tonight, he's looked like a significantly better fighter than he ever looked before. I know that the Mayweather training camps have sort of added a lot of things. They've added Mimo Heredia, so take that how you will. But Berto Jack has definitely sort of started to reach the potential that promoters were saying that he had, that I never really saw. I always thought he was a solid prospect, but not a top guy. But I think right now if Andre Ward's out of that division, he's got as good of an argument as anybody to be top guy in the division. I mean, maybe Arthur Abraham just on how much he's done, but I mean, Arthur Abraham hasn't done anything more significant than beating Groves and Jarrell in his recent fights.
Do you think there's any sign there that Mayweather may actually be trying to move into more of a promoting and training role? Because I think it's always been the case for as long as we've known Floyd and as long as he's had his own team, that his fighters have kind of been sideshows, and almost like he's deliberately kept the level of talent in his teammates down so that he can be the one who shines. He's always been like, at his fighters' fights and watching them get knocked out and tell them that it's okay and that it happens to everyone except him, of course. But Berto Jack seems to have really stepped up and proven himself to be separate from the rest of the pack, separate from the Ishe Smiths and the Ashley Theophanes of the world.
Yeah, no offense to Ashley Theophane or anything, but I really don't know what they're doing with him because he's in his mid-30s. He's kind of topped out at what he's going to be. I suppose they might get him a world title fight at some point. They've gotten Ishe Smith a title fight, so
I think he's just making money. I mean, he's beaten a lot of.
Serving as like a routine sparring partner for Floyd. That's a great gig. I mean, he's a solid fighter, but it just surprises me how much they've featured him on a lot of these cards.
Yeah, it is kind of strange. I don't know, but Berto Jack, lots of potential there. George Groves still has potential. I wouldn't mind seeing a rematch of this bout. I mean, Groves is fun for the same reason that we said Andre Berto can be, because he's often very vulnerable. He's got that kind of poor posture. He can't seem to escape the right hand, but once he gets hit by it, he does well with the limitations that he has. He sculpts his game nicely and adapts nicely and tends to work around tough opponents. So both of these guys adapting to each other, both of them receiving really good instructions in the corner too. That was really nice to see. So I wouldn't mind seeing this bout again if there's nobody else at 168.
Yeah, Groves might want to, get a tune-up win back in or something like that over in Europe. But after that, I wouldn't mind seeing them again next year. It was a good fight. Actually, I expected it to be a pretty good fight. It was a little better than I thought it would be.
Me too.
Really solid fight throughout. It was completely entertaining to watch. Some good shots on both sides. I thought both guys fought pretty well. Groves, I thought he was spent around round 8, but he did, like you said, make a nice little stand toward the end of the fight, and that, I think that spoke well of both of these guys tonight. I thought that was a really good fight.
Absolutely. So on to the co-feature and our last fight for tonight's episode of the 13th round. Rocky Martinez rematched Orlando Salido, a fight that Martinez won the last time around in Puerto Rico. Salido, classic Mexican versus Puerto Rican matchup. Salido really seemed to have the better of the action to me. Again, Martinez, like Groves before him, made an impressive comeback towards the end of the fight, really dug down and showed some guts. But I thought Salido had too much of a lead at that point to possibly lose the decision. So the fact that Martinez was given the nod struck me as a little strange.
Yeah, I was surprised by the draw. I thought Salido had clearly won that fight. I had him 8-4, I think.
Me too.
I mean, really, really good fight. One of the better fights I've seen this year. And it hasn't been a great year for great fights in boxing. So, I mean, that's up there with the fight of the year contenders, along with their first fight was too. I'd have to rewatch both to decide which I thought was better, but I thought tonight's might have been a little better. It was a really grueling fight, really a war of attrition type of a fight. Very underappreciated by a crowd that did not come to see it.
Right.
I thought there would be a little more response, but it was clearly a crowd gathered just to see Floyd Mayweather off. I don't think.
Yeah, and the only non-Floyd Mayweather fans there were the British fans who showed up for Groves, and they were all too bummed out by the Groves fight to root for either of these guys as they just slugged it out in a silent arena.
Yeah, it was a really, really good fight. There were tons of action the whole way through. Both guys took a lot of great shots. Rocky Martinez showed a hell of a chin because Salido hit him with some bombs in that fight, man, and he was all over, and especially in the second half of that fight, he was just, relentlessly throwing punches. He was 1,037 that CompuBox had him throwing in that fight. It was an insane work rate throughout for Salido. He looked, in my opinion, I thought he looked a lot better in this fight than he did in April, and he looked fine in April. He still looked like a good fighter, but I'm sure they're going to do this a third time because I don't think either of them have anything where they're going to make more money or get more attention. I mean, and that you can put that fight on pretty much any card that you can sneak it in on. It's going to be a great addition to the card, or it could headline again.
Throw that on a PBC headliner.
Yeah, you could do that. They could go back to independent pay-per-view if they really wanted to, like they did for the first fight. But I think this fight got enough of an audience, at least at home, that loved the fight, that I think this would be a great TV main event to put them together again.
Sure. I can't disagree with any of that. Overall thoughts on the night before we sign off?
Yeah, I thought it was a very good show for the most part. I mean, I didn't think much of the main event, but I expected absolutely nothing, so it wasn't a letdown or anything. It was just kind of getting through the 45 minutes of what it was. But before that, a very good show. Going even back to the Martirosyan fight on Showtime. Like I said, there were 4 good fights before the main event, so you can't ask a whole lot more than that.
My thoughts exactly. What could you possibly expect from the main event? Altogether, if it was in fact Floyd's final fight, still have my doubts that it was. He seemed insistent that he wouldn't be fighting again. We'll see by next year, I'm sure, as you said earlier. But, pretty fun exhibition as far as exhibition fights go. Floyd got to have a little fun in the ring, and that's always fun to see. And then, as long as you tuned in at 8, then the undercard may have actually made this one worth your money. So no complaints, really. No complaints. And I expected to have a few.
I expected to have more. I had a few. I thought I would be more distraught after that main event. It was just an empty fucking void of nothing. I mean, it's just what it.
Viewers at home, you see before you 2 men who are not at all distraught, not in the slightest.
Yeah, I'm not distraught.
Very undistressed. Well, thank you guys for joining us. We hope you enjoyed tonight's fights as much as we did. And if not, we hope you at least enjoyed the chance to see what may, in fact, maybe, quite possibly, maybe not, be Floyd Mayweather's last fight of what has been a controversial but altogether very impressive career that I'm sure will go down in history as one of the best of all time, certainly among the best of our generation. So thanks for tuning in, you guys. We hope you enjoyed the show. This has been the 13th round. You can find all the other Mayweather Berto coverage and all the other boxing coverage you need at badlefthook.com, and we will see you next time.